start recording. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're so glad that you're here. I'm very excited to have Lori and Tim here from Bellarmine Chapel in Cincinnati, Ohio, to share a bit about their action plan and to give us some inspiration as we move towards this kind of more nebulous of like, we're signing up for the platform, we're trying to create an action plan, and I'm just very excited to kind of have this opportunity to see a completed action plan and to hear about the process that the parish went through to get to this point. So as we get started, as always, I'm going to turn it over very soon, but I do just want to begin with some prayer and some settling in. All right, so today we are going to be focusing on the Laudato Si action platform, and with our Ignatian spirituality piece, the Cardoner vision, which is one of my favorite kind of moments from St. Ignatius's life. But before we start, we do want to start with an opening prayer. And, you know, obviously in the last few weeks, especially in the United States, we're holding all of the individuals and communities who've been impacted by racism and mass gun violence. And we know that, racism and white supremacy were at the heart of at least a few of these shootings. So in the spirit of integral ecology, we understand that this is all interconnected, and that the same roadblocks to sensible gun laws in the United States are also at play as we think about meaningful climate legislation. And so we just want to take a moment to center ourselves and pray that as individuals, lawmakers, and a global community, that we experience a conversion of heart towards a culture of life. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim now, who's going to read this prayer by Sister Diana Ortiz. She was a great advocate for justice, and she passed away in February of 2021. So we uplift her voice today.
I just invite everyone to take a deep breath and center yourself with God. Compassionate God, we turn to you in our grief. Provide comfort to the brokenhearted, all those who are frightened, despairing, and who are hoping for peace. Help us to become deeply aware of the shared humanity that comes when a sister or brother falls victim to violence. Guide us on a path of understanding and peaceful dialogue. Show us rightful ways to rid our homes, our neighborhoods, our workplaces, our cities, and our world of weapons that destroy lives. Grant us the courage to stand together, to join with Rachel in her strident protest of lament, calling for an end to gun violence. Empower us to be people of light and hope amid a world painted with darkness and violence. Amen.
Thank you, Tim. And so in that same prayerful spirit, we always begin with a land acknowledgement. If you know the names of the traditional people who stewarded the lands where you currently live, you can enter those into the chat, and I will read a land acknowledgement from what is currently known as Cleveland, Ohio. In recognizing the land upon which I reside, express deep gratitude to the Native peoples who lived and worked here before me, those whose stewardship and resilient spirits have sustained the sacred land, which is the traditional homeland of the Erie, Lenape, Delaware, Shawnee, Wyandot, Miami, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and other Great Lakes tribes. And finally, we also just take a moment to acknowledge that this conversation that we're having is important, because we are having an unprecedented impact on the planet and on future generations. And so we just say this to remind ourselves that that these conversations and gatherings sustain us in this important work, and that decisions and ideas that are shared here will have consequences for other people and species now and in the future. And so we thank you for engaging in this important conversation today. So just before we get started, I did just want to take one moment to just briefly talk about the Cardoner vision as kind of the frame for our conversation today. This is mentioned in the autobiography of St. Ignatius of Loyola. And as we can see from this short description, it doesn't really explain in detail what happened, but we know that this was a moment of deep conversion for St. Ignatius. I was reading a little bit more about this on the IgnatianSpirituality.com website, and they kind of brought up three important points, which is soon after this vision, St. Ignatius abandoned kind of severe fasting and embraced a more balanced spirituality. It also led directly to his decision to write the spiritual exercises. And many Ignatian scholars think that the vision is the basis for the contemplation to attain the love of God, which happens kind of at the end of the spiritual exercises. And that is really this beautiful reflection that presents God, who is present in all things, and who labors to transform creation as kind of this ceaseless flowing of blessings and gifts onto us, kind of like the sunlight. And so I just think it's very fitting that St. Ignatius had this life-altering moment while he was gazing at a river, immersed in contemplation in creation and in nature. It says that everything seemed new. He had kind of these new eyes for creation. And, you know, from this spirit and our sense of lives as members of this interconnected web of life, when we see life as gift, and this idea that so much goodness abounds, that allows us to start from a place of gratitude for all of the gifts that God has given us in creation. And so in this natural kind of rising up in us, this welling up of love, it's natural for us to respond in deeds rather than in words. And so I think that this invitation of the Laudato Si action platform to transforms and our visions from kind of these words into actual concrete actions is a great inspiration for us at our institutions. So we just uplift this tiny moment from Ignatius's life that seemed to change everything, and pray that we can kind of enter into our work in this spirit. So I'm going to stop talking now and turn it over to Tim and Lori. We are so glad that you are here with us. They are, like I said, from Bellarmine Chapel in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so I'll turn it over to the two of you to introduce yourselves and to share the great work that you've done at Bellarmine. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for hosting us and for inviting us to be here with you today. I appreciated the prayer and the vision you opened with. That idea of love is one we talk about often in our parish, and how we invite others to find that space that they love and to grow from that in their actions. So thank you. Brief introduction, I'm Tim Severin. I'm the social mission director at Bellarmine Chapel. I've been there 7 years, and that lined up really nicely with when Laudato Si came out. So I've gotten to be involved in that work through our parish from the beginning. Laura, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, and I want to also thank you for inviting us. It's exciting to share what we're passionate about with all of you. My name is Laurie Roche, and I've been a longtime member of Bellarmine. And I'm a retired journalist and public relations executive. And so when I retired about 5 years ago, I got involved in the Healthy Earth team, which was just starting at Bellarmine, and in its work in community gardens, and wanted to do something very different from what I had been doing before. And so that's exactly what has happened. And I'm very, very happy. I seem to have found what I really want to do in these last years of my life. So that's a blessing.
It is a blessing for us too. I'm going to share screen here. All right. So I'll do some of the background on Bellarmine and our plan process, and Lori will outline a bit of the content of the plan, and then we'll do some of the challenges we ran into along the way. But feel free to jump in with questions, either aloud or in the chat, and we'll try to address them as we go through. So Bellarmine is the parish that is on Xavier University's campus here in Cincinnati, but it is a parish community. We have some students who are parishioners, but by and large, student masses are separate from parish masses. So we have 850 families in our parish from 60 different zip codes. So like a lot of Jesuit parishes, it's an intentional community that comes together around Jesuit values, including a strong commitment to social mission. We've had a full-time social mission person on staff for the last 25 years, and really seen that work expand over time. We do have a robust, partnership with Xavier University as well. Lori and I are both on the Laudato Si Action platform planning group for the university, and we look for points of synthesis through there. So you'll see a few of those as we go through. So who the Healthy Earth team was, we formed shortly after the encyclical came out. Really, it's in a way to respond to the encyclical. We were deliberate in our naming, not to just call ourselves, though it's a wonderful name, not just a green team, but a Healthy Earth team, trying to look at that integration of people and planet that's so central to Laudato Si, right? So we have 10 active members and then a network of around 30 to 40 support members who get involved in the different projects but don't come to the planning meetings. I give staff time to this, and we have the support of our pastor and our last 3 pastors. So that's certainly helped ground and expand the work. We organize our activities into 4 theme areas: pray, learn, act, and advocate, which we'll cover a bit more when we get to the plan. But I say this all to say that having this team in place gave us a foundation to build this plan out from. Much of what you'll see in the plan is existing activities we hope to expand and grow. We've divided it into sort of existing and new projects. But this foundation was pretty important. And I think starting from that space of relationship building and having a network is an important place to begin. Here's our little mission statement. Our team inspires our parish through educational initiatives to connect the tenets of our Catholic faith and the need for action in protecting our common home from ecological exploitation and injustice. So with that foundation, we began this planning process really as soon as we got the materials from the Vatican. And early on got buy-in from our parish council, which is we call advisory here, and the pastor. We took a timeline to their meeting and said, "Can you get behind this?" And at that point, they were sort of like, "Sure, go for it." So not a lot of necessarily hands-on involvement, but they gave us the blessing, and our Healthy Earth team really ran with the process and steered the process. We had several months of brainstorming in our team, but I think pretty essentially, we reached out to other stakeholders in the parish so that this didn't become just a Healthy Earth team where the 10 people who care about the earth kind of effort, but really got buy-in from others across the parish. So we did meetings with all of the other leadership groups in the parish, our finance, our evangelization and discipleship, which is faith formation, our youth and young adult, our worship or liturgy team, and our social mission team more broadly, get that intersection. And did brainstorming on values and brainstorming on content, actual activities and strategies, inviting them to really own this process with us. So that, I think, really expanded the web of support that we had even before the plan was launched. So the actual drafting, we tried at one meeting to draft with all of us together, but having 10 people draft something in committee is challenging. So we created a smaller subgroup of 3 of us who did a good part of the pulling together that large brain cloud of information into values. We went down to 20 values, down to 6 values that sort of summed up those 20 plus values. And then the same with activities. We sort of look for common themes across and using that pray, learn, act, and advocate framework, we're able to sort of sort them out into that framework, which I know is not the 7 goals that the Pope has proposed for us. But we did, and you'll see this when Lori presents, we did line up each of the 7 goals with 1 or more of those 4 framework pieces for us. So I think what we like about the process and what Brendan and I were talking about earlier was the fact that it's a flexible process, right? It's adaptable to your local setting and context. So that 4 focus areas works for us, and I'm sure other things work for others. So, we can talk more about that. Then the other piece, though, the piece that I pulled in from some of my background in nonprofit management, my past career was in community center work, was this logic model process. And it took a little bit to wrap our heads around as a group at first, but once we got into it, it ended up being a really useful tool for organizing our work, to make it more of a living and breathing document, not a static sort of goals, actions, objectives kind of thing. It has more fluidity to it. I'll show you an example. Here we go. So this is the one for advocate. Content you don't really need to look at, but the top headings is what I wanted to draw attention to, because it sort of puts all of your activity into a series of if-then statements that creates this theory of change. This idea that if we do this, it'll lead to this, to this, to this, to this. Ultimately, you can see in that last category are the 7 goals of the platform, right? So you can work from left to right. If we invest these resources in these activities, we can get these participants to create these outputs for our group. Those are the measurables. And that will lead to this change in learning, a change in our way of thinking, which will then lead to this change in behavior or action, which will then impact in this goal. So it's creates a theory of change. And you could do the same. You could work it left to right or right to left. So you could say, here's our goal, how do we get there? And then work backwards from there. So it became a really useful tool for our thinking about this and making sure that what we're doing is actually impacting our community and the wider world the way we want it to. And it's a living, breathing document, because as we learn and go, we can change our logic models. They're linked in our plan, but they're linked as a Google Sheet, so they can continually evolve. And then here's our plan. It ended up being 16 pages plus the 4 pages of logic models linked in there. We released it at Earth Day, or 2 days after Earth Day at the Sunday closest, our Earth Day Sunday. We did it from the pulpit. We had one of our student interns gave the homilies that day at all of our masses, really drawing the connection for us in a lived way. We distributed native trees that day to parishioners, did petitions on this, and we released a postcard called Laudato Si and You that took the plan, which is sort of community-wide, and brought it down to the you level, you and your family, so offering some concrete action steps for people to do in their lives that would lead to community-wide change. So I can show you the plan very briefly, and then Lori, you can go through some of the details on it. But just so you see it, let me try to pull that up if I can.
And for everyone, I linked to the plan in the chat.
Oh, thank you. And I think I didn't mention this, but we did, this is again where flexibility comes in. We did a 3-year plan. And that was primarily due to our local context where the Archdiocese of Cincinnati is forming family of parishes. So by 2025, we'll be in a family with the other Jesuit parish in town, and that'll lead to some reshaping. I know we're supposed to be submitting it annually, so we'll do another one in next year and after. But this one is 3 years, and I don't need to read through this all, but letter from the pastor, overview stuff. The values were in here, the value statements, which Lori will cover in a second. And then on to those 4 areas that I talked about with pray, learn, act, and advocate, sort of a history, and then the next steps coming forward. So it ended up being hopefully a useful tool for our parish. We've been doing sort of summaries of it because you can't expect most people to read 16 pages, right? But we're trying to bring it into bite-size and digestible pieces for each of the groups in the parish. Hey, Lori, I'll share screen again and you can jump to some of the content.
Yeah.
All right.
So those of you who are creating a plan now or thinking about it, the Vatican does call for a section in which you enumerate your core values that are behind your plan and behind whatever efforts you have to implement the plan. And I won't read all these, but you can see that there's definitely a theme here where in my view, we're trying to help people connect care for the earth, that Laudato Si call, with their faith, because we believe that on the Healthy Earth team, if it starts with a sense of wonder, connection with your faith, that the actions and the advocacy will then flow naturally from that emotional and spiritual connection. And the other, I think, theme running through our values is the interconnectedness of all things, which is, of course, a Jesuit seeing God in a Jesuit value, seeing God in all things, and as well a sense of humankind's appropriate and proper place in the ecology and world ecology and the planet, on the planet, which perhaps needs some adjusting, as we all know, a bit more humility perhaps in regard to our connections with other non-human creatures. So next slide. So our first theme, and as Tim mentioned, we have connected our 4 areas with the goals from the Laudato Si action platform. So the obvious connection with our pray theme is ecological spirituality. You can see here, these are the top 4 things, are things that we are currently doing. The Just Faith Eco Series is through Just Faith Ministries, and they have a series, ecological series, Sacred Land, Sacred Water, Sacred Air, and we've done 2 of those, and we have a 3rd to do. The witness reflections happen at masses. And then our new project here is something that is working on now, where we're planning a series of webinars, conversations that will begin in the fall of this year and conclude with a retreat in the spring. And we are doing these with other Jesuit works in the area. Next slide, please. Learning is a big part of what we do, if you recall from our mission statement. So we throw a lot of stuff out there for people in hopes that people will connect in whatever way works best for them. For some, it may be reading or looking at videos. Others will look at our green actions. Meatless meetups were trips to vegetarian restaurants. We had to give those up during COVID, and we're reviving them. And those were just fun gatherings. Earth excursions was some outings to various nature spots in the Cincinnati area. And then you can see there some new projects that we have done recycling back and forth at Bellarmine, and we're trying to find a happy medium between doing it for people and motivating people to do it on their own. And then if you see from the next slide, we'll show you some of the things that we have done education-wise. In the top right there, you'll just see a social media page. Below that is the Laudato Si and You postcard that we handed out on when we announced the Laudato Si action platform at our Earth Day Mass. The back of it is just some various quotes, and then there's a QR code that links people to the document that you see in the middle, which is an expansion. Again, Laudato Si and You, trying to bring this down to the personal level. Where do you fit in? Because one of the things we'll talk about later is we know that people are on a continuum of their environmental awareness, their climate change awareness, their knowledge and desire to make lifestyle changes and to learn. And so we try to offer people different ways of entering this mission, if you will, depending on where they are. And then on the far left is just from our social mission newsletter, which comes out monthly. And every month we have in there a green action, which is written by different members of the Healthy Earth team. Next slide. So one of the biggest things that we do, these top 3 are really very big. Active Discipleship Days started in 2020, Tim, or 2021, 2020. Those happen 3 or 4 times a year, where parishioners are invited to come out and do a day of volunteer work at a lot of different sites throughout the community. Some of them are directly connected to parish endeavors. Others are from sister parishes, food pantries, and so on. And then below that, you'll see the Nexus Community Garden and the Urban Farm and Fresh is Better. Those are 2 very big projects that we started primarily because food and gardening bring people together. We have discovered a marvelous vehicle for community engagement, for companionship, for friendship. Yes, that we do take food from these 2 gardens to food pantries for those who have food insecurity, but that's really only part of the picture. And so the Nexus Community Garden and Urban Farm is on the Xavier University campus. Bellarmine now manages it, and it's existed for a long time, but our parish now manages it. And the Urban Farm part is actually a Black-owned farming business, and so we're supporting that as well. And then the rest of it is community beds, where the food goes primarily to food pantries, and then to individual beds that are given to people in the surrounding neighborhoods. Fresh is Better is a project through which we have built 80 garden beds in people's yards in the nearby, largely African American community of Evanston. And people then garden those on their own. And we have some community garden activity in Evanston as well. And we do a number of things to bring each other together. Gardening mentorships, a potluck, garden tour, a number of a plant sale, well, it's a plant giveaway. So all of these activities have food and gardening as a theme that just seems a natural fit to bring people together. And then you can see some of our, I'll just say very briefly, assess the Bellarmine Chapel carbon footprint. We do, if you're affiliated with an independent church, we are part of a college campus, which means we have some limited autonomy on what we can do. But there are other churches in our community, and I can guarantee in yours as well, that are starting to do things like solar power, pollinator gardens on their land, and renewable energy options. And we want to do as much of that as we can do. The next slide, please. So this beautiful, colorful map, I can't go into the details for you. I can't even see all of them, but you get the point that there are these, the four big green dots are the Fresh is Better concept and how it brings together Evanston, which is the community in which our chapel is located, and the chapel itself and the Xavier community. We do this through students, through our neighbors, through people who live in the area, people who work in the area, people who go to church in the area, and it keeps expanding. We've been doing Fresh is Better now for 6 years, and it just keeps sort of growing, and the connections keep deepening. And one of the things that we had hoped and had worked for and are still working for is that some of the people in Evanston themselves would take over some of the leadership roles and the planning roles. And that has started to happen as well. It takes time to develop these relationships. And one of the things that I've learned is that showing up in a community and being there year after year has been is where you reap the benefit of a real connection and friendships. It's not a one and done at all. And then our last theme, advocate. Again, you see the goal from the Laudato Si action platform. There are a number of organizations related to the environment that you can see listed here. And one or more of our members of the Healthy Earth team will participate in these organizations and their meetings, either just to be informed about what they're doing or to actually help their activities. So all of these are really important connections for us. That XU is Xavier University. And we also, in the parish, have an advocacy team that does advocacy on a number of different endeavors, whether it's the environment or racism or gun violence or whatever it might be. And we encourage people to take part in advocacy actions as we learn about them. Next slide. I think I'm done with mine. We're going to be sharing this part.
Yeah, we can both jump in here, Lori.
Yeah.
We just thought we'd name some challenges and that we've faced along the way. Because it is, if you just saw those earlier slides, you might say, wow, that's great. But there's been a lot of pushback on different pieces along the way. And that's a reality for our parish, and I know for many other parishes, especially where pastors or leadership might not be as supportive of what is happening as we've been fortunate to have. So even as an intentional community, right, of people coming together around social mission, there's been a pretty significant variation or diversity of perspectives on how important this is and how it fits into our faith life generally. Social mission, even in social mission circles, when we began this plan, there was pushback to, does this mean we're doing less social justice work and more sustainability work? And so there was some educating around how Laudato Si is saying these aren't two separate things. These have to be the same integrated whole. And that education's really been ongoing in our parish, I think, in leadership circles and just with our parishioners in the pews. Do you want to speak to that more, Lori?
No, I think you said it really well, Tim. I have heard, and perhaps some of the rest of you have heard, that faith communities have been kind of late to the climate change game, if you will. And I believe that we have tremendous moral power, if you will, to make a connection that the emotional and the faith connections out of which people change because they love the earth and they understand that it is everything is interconnected, as Tim said. And so I think we're just starting to tap into. In Cincinnati, we have an organization called Faith Communities Go Green, which is all communities of all different faiths. And I do think that it's an organization with tremendous potential. And in your own communities, the faith communities have tremendous potential to move us forward a little bit faster on our work to prevent climate change pathway. So, but there is a wide variety of concern, and what I deal with sometimes, and I keep it to myself as best I can, but sometimes, that inward eye roll of, you've got to be kidding me, that you've never heard of this, or you're completely unconcerned, or that doesn't happen often. But, when you're really passionate about something and you see that some people have really, this is way not even on their radar screen, it can be discouraging sometimes, and you have to just put that aside and speak to the main audience, your main audience, which I think is people who are concerned, perhaps are doing some things already and want to do more. People who are climate change deniers, and who are relatively few these days, but they do still exist. I don't think we're going to reach them all that well. Or let me put it this way, I would rather spend my energies elsewhere.
Jumping to the communications piece, that's something too we've struggled or been challenged by. Environmentalists, right, get the bad rap for being doom and gloom and making people feel bad. And so we've tried to be very intentional about the reality we're facing, but the hope for solutions that can come from our faith community and our families getting engaged. So like the tree giveaway we did wasn't framed as we're deforesting the planet, plant a tree, but more of this can be a fun, exciting project to see nature in your own yard, your diversifying your yard. We listed the animals and insects that would be supported by that tree. And we deliberately brought it to families with small children as an activity they could do together that would be fun. So that kind of communications has been something we have to keep coming back to, I think. And it does invite more people into it, I think, instead of pushing them away. No, we're wanting to get to Q&A. Do you want to speak to any of these others, Lori?
There is the only other really thing, everyone knows this, there is a lot of, it's both good and also challenging, a lot of information out there, a lot of organizations doing really good work, a lot of information, and you want to make that available to people so that they can learn more, because people are eager to learn, but it can seem a little overwhelming at times. So we want to help people not feel overwhelmed and not feel that, oh, well, I can do so little, so it's not going to make any difference. That's a common theme in environmental weariness that people get, and to help people understand, yes, it does make a difference. What each individual does make a difference, and to help people feel that and not feel overwhelmed.
We can come back to any of those with questions. I just have one more slide here. just our next steps. That's my son there in the pink shirt. That's our plant giveaway. So we said this already, but we're trying to have this be a living, breathing document for the parish, not something we spent hours writing to sit on the shelf. So to do that, we're taking the biblical gospel calling to heart and going out 2 by 2, and meeting with all the teams in the parish. Around, I think 12 different teams were on our list that we're meeting with, and sort of putting forth the call to how can this be integrated into your work as a team. Your work is worship, planning our liturgies. Your work as dismantling racism. Your work as faith formation evangelization. And those have been very fruitful conversations so far. I think there's an eagerness to be involved in this, and so I hope that becomes very, very fruitful as we go forward. So there's more ownership universally. We're also in the process of drafting surveys to collect some baseline data on parishioner attitudes and behaviors, so we can see how they change across this 3-year period. I mentioned the logic model adjusting over time already, and our social mission core team is planning a parish-wide program on Laudato Si, bringing together anyone involved in any sort of ministry in the parish to talk about how we can break across silos of justice issues and use this framework to guide us going forward. So, anything else you want to add, Lori, before I jump to?
No, that's great, Tim. Thank you.
That's our contact information if anyone wants to take it down.
And those 2 pictures are, one is the entrance to a community garden where we work, and the other is a food pantry in Evanston. We delivered to them some overgrown chard and some peat, but they were happy to get it. They don't get a whole lot of fresh food, so that's always welcome.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. You've given us so much to think about. And so I just want to open it up now if anyone has any questions for Tim or Lori about the process, or yeah, just anything that's coming up for you as you hear about their action plan. And I did see someone did ask, Marilyn asked in the chat, is there a particular story behind the 2 birds in the air conditioning unit picture?
No, it's just all the pictures are all local except for that one, which I was looking for sort of a challenge picture and saw that. And so that just sort of cracked me up because I thought these birds were probably in for a rough time once that air conditioner starts going. People get sucked in or pushed out.
Thank you. It's very effective photo. And I think sometimes when people are thinking about their air conditioning, if they went out and stood by it when it was running, it might help, help people make decisions on how much of it to use. But yeah, birds are.
All right, so Julia, I see you, and then we'll have Jonathan go after you, and then we have some questions in the chat.
Thank you for taking my question, and thanks for this great presentation of your great work. I'm interested in hearing more about your earth excursions. How did you do them, and who participated, and was there some tied to some spiritual exercises when you were out and about? I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, we had it started through a parishioner's own interest. Sort of an outdoor explorer. And so the invitation was open. There were differing levels of intensity in those trips. So we tried to make them generally accessible, especially to young families and with kids, folks who aren't going to go to a lecture, but who might, through a hands-on experience in the world, come to know and love creation and God through creation, right? So we use the basic experience, reflection, action
Mhm.
cycle, right? And some of them involved more prayerful reflection than others. Some ended with picnics and discussion. Some were more one-off. So there's a variety. But there were things like biking, canoeing, hiking, just picnics in the park.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, Jonathan.
Hi, so thanks. Can you hear me?
Now we
Yes.
can.
Okay, all right. I was saying thank you for the presentation. And sorry if you mentioned this in passing, but you started off with a little bit about process of drafting the plan and how you started to draft it with a large committee, then went to kind of a smaller committee because it was more straightforward that way. How long from when you first did your initial convening and deciding that you were going to create this document, how long in terms of like calendar months did it take to get to kind of a final draft? And then along the way, were you doing check-ins with people to gain consensus, or how did that, I guess I'm really most curious about how long it took, but also a little bit more about the process.
Well,
Yeah,
I can answer
go
them.
ahead,
Tim can
Lori.
jump in too. To be honest, ours took a relatively short period of time, in my view, because we wanted, let's see, I'm not sure exactly when we enrolled. I'm going to say when the parish enrolled, maybe February, Tim, of
I
this
think we
year.
enrolled in December, but we didn't get much done in December because
Didn't get much done in December. So, and then we had the plan done by, or, pretty much finished by the end of April, which is a fairly fast track. But again, we're a parish and we had the advantage of being a parish, not a large institution like a university. And secondly, we were already, the Health Earth team, doing a lot of things already that we wanted to continue. So we knew that we could formulate the plans around those things that we were already doing, as well as, pushing ourselves forward. We did seek input along the way. Given the time constraints, we went to, Tim can speak more to that. I will say, both Tim and I are familiar with the development of a Laudato action plan at the university level, Xavier University, huge, and they're taking an entire year to develop their plan. So there's a range of how long you want to do that, but theirs involves every single department at the university, a lot of committees and so on that we didn't have time for, nor were we inclined to go to that much detail.
Yeah, I think to just add that I think we took that don't let perfect be the enemy of the good to heart, as we realized this was going to be the first year of a 7-year process, and so we wanted to get something out there before everyone. And those 2x2 meetings are continuing to involve input and adaptation. And so I would hope that what we put out next April will be much improved from what we put out this April, right? And more grounded in many more voices. So a work in progress.
Great.
I just want to add one thing to that. I do think it's important when developing a plan. I think one of the most successful things about ours was how we released it, the timing, that it was connected with Earth Day, that it was with the parish mass. We managed to quickly throw some educational materials, the trees, all of that, a critical mass of kind of public relations elements that helped really build awareness. We've gotten people who have joined the Healthy Earth team since that came out. It really just was impactful for people to have all that together. So when and how you release it is important. Part of the timing.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
It looks like Fran had a question, and Terry also, it's all connected about, Fran, do you want to talk about the divestment question and your other question about advocacy?
Sure. You, at the bottom of one of the slides, you mentioned something about divestment. And I'm just wondering, I know in our parish, there's really not, there are no investments, although it may be different in your parish, you know, parish-wide, but certainly individuals. And then the other question is just, did you get any pushback basically on political involvement in terms of advocacy?
To the divestment question, Bellarmine does keep, I don't know the amount, but does have some money, though it is through the archdiocesan notes. So that's why it said explore divestment rather than divest. We need to see what's possible within the archdiocese framework, and that remains to be explored. But being on the university campus and seeing Creighton and Loyola and others divest has sort of prompted the students on our campus to talk about it a little more too. So we want to be involved in that piece of it as well, if we can be. And then the second question was about politics.
Yes. Legislation, interaction with, you know, senators, representatives, et cetera.
Yeah. So that pray, learn, act, advocate is not really meant to be sequential, but for many people it ends up being. You pray and learn first, and then you move into action, and advocacy seems like the most challenging action for many people. So our numbers of people getting involved in that are much smaller than, say, the gardens. It's really been our core group of Healthy Earth Team folks who've done legislative visits. So we do postcards and other petitions after masses that we'll send the legislators, and that'll get a much larger involvement. And there's some political pushback, but not less on this issue than some of the other issues the parish is involved with. Lori, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. But, you know, people know that in general, we're a fairly progressive parish. And if they have problems with the advocacy actions, they don't have to participate. Or they can always, their voices will always be heard. They can speak to anybody about their concerns. And it's always, of course, voluntary.
But having something like Laudato Si to fall back upon is very helpful.
Yes,
you
it
don't
is.
have to be in any kind of political argument. You can ground it in Catholic teaching.
And I just wanted to check, and Strad, we'll go to you next because I saw your question in the chat, and then Rosemary. But Terry, did that answer your question about divestment?
Yeah, thanks for the question from Fran, and I think it was answered very well. It's like the money, I assume, is with the university and the archdiocese. I mean, that's where that's where the bigger dollar amounts are, and gets a little more complicated, I assume. So thanks for that response.
And then we'll go to Strad, and then Rosemary, you'll be next.
You're muted, Strad.
All right, I had a question in the chat, but I'm going to leave that for later. I was specifically interested in your 2x2 outreach program. That sounds very interesting in terms of being involved actively with all of the different teams. Could you give a little more description of how that is? You said literally, is it literally two people from the bigger team are going to every meeting that the parish has, including staff meetings? I'm just asking. I don't. And then what is your role on each of the agendas? So are you just there to listen, or do you have like give a presentation and you go? I mean, I'm looking for some structural guidance, because getting involved in that way is a huge commitment in terms of time on the part of the people who go to those meetings, but it also becomes another activity for each of the teams to consider who are trying to do other things as well as this.
Yeah, we're going, when I said 2x2 to meetings, we're going to one meeting 2x2, not every meeting of every group. So it's less of a commitment.
Okay,
And we're deliberately getting onto agendas to talk about this as a topic with the group. So we're asking for generally 20 minutes on each agenda. So Lori and I were at a meeting where we had a full hour of conversation that it was very exciting. And we're prepping them just with the plan, but asking them to look at the last 4 pages of the plan where it really is I don't want to say rubber hits the road, bad metaphor for this space, but
Yeah.
where the seed gets planted. So we're asking them to read those 4 pages in advance, and then we're doing a little bit of overview, but really digging into that question of helping that group discern what they can own in that. So like our worship focused on the prayer out of the 4, or our faith formation groups focus on the learn. So we're trying to make those connections explicitly.
so as a follow-up, how is this different from what you did when you were first building up that brainstorming list? Because you also went to the teams at that point, as I understood. So is this a follow-up, or?
In some
Yeah.
ways it is, it's a second touch point with them, almost an accountability moment. But it is more concrete at this point, I think, than an open-ended brainstorm. Lori, would you add to that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it does. I can see where you would say, Strad, that it does sound it. I would have to say that because of our time constraints, when we went before the plan was written, it was really sort of general, a few minutes, get their ideas, make sure that they understood that this is not a Healthy Earth Team silo or a Healthy Earth Team work only. And then after the plan was written, we helped people. We really wanted to hear from people on that committee, and we really weren't letting them off the hook, and they didn't want to be off the hook. But what will you, worship core team, do to bring more visibility in our prayers during masses, or whatever creative ways, or what will you, who are working with children in our religious education programs, what activities will you have that will integrate it? And people, when you make it specific for them, they really like that and will run with all kinds of ideas about how they can incorporate care for creation themes into whatever their area of ministry is. And so we were asking for specifics and commitments.
If I could follow up, I think this is a really critical point, because when you look at the guidelines from the Vatican on how to build the plan, there's an awful lot of going back and forth and bringing in all of the voices. And it becomes the university scale. It's going to take us a year to do this. And the advice that I received from our Parish Pastoral Council leader was, give us some specific suggestions. Don't make us try to figure this out on our own. And I think your view, I don't remember the management style, but what you're using is the build it quick and then fix it after you build it, because it can always be changed. And I think that that's critical for everybody of trying to build a plan, to say it's okay to build something fast that's going to change, because at least you have it out there and now you can update it. And then I like your follow-up, that idea of then meeting with the teams afterwards to go back into more detail. So that sounds like a perfect way.
And I would just say one quick thing to that, Strad. Yes, give us ideas and specifics, but it's also, we're trying to instill in them, it's also your responsibility. Your work of your committee. Think of your own creative ideas. You know what this is about.
Right.
And so you tell us some ideas too. We can't do all of this.
Right.
And so it's to help them own it too.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, I do just want to quickly recognize it's 4:30 and I really respect everyone's time. So if Rosemary, if you want to hang on and ask your question, we'll keep things open. And as long, well, I didn't ask Tim and Lori if they're still
Fine.
free.
Fine
But
with
if
me
you're-
anyway. I'm okay.
If you're free to hang here, that's great. But I just want to thank everyone who came and who has a hard stop at 4:30 for being here. And did just want to make 2 quick announcements. One, the enrollment date for kind of cohort 1 of the Laudato Si action platform was supposed to end on Earth Day this year. It's been extended again. What a bountiful gift. So you can be in cohort 1 if you register by St. Francis Day of this year. So that's October 4th, 2022. And then so that's when enrollment will end. And then the second cohort will begin on November 14th. So those are just 2 dates to have in your mind as you're talking about this at your parishes. I don't exactly understand what the difference is between the cohorts. So if anybody knows that, please let me know after the meeting. The second thing is we're going to be having one more networking session for Renewing the Earth. We're going to combine June and July. So we'll be doing it in June just because we know people are on vacation. So I'll send out more information about that shortly. So thank you all for being here. If anyone needs to leave, please feel free to do so. And if anyone's going to stick around, we'll go to Rosemary if you're still here to ask your question.
I am still here, and thank you so much. This is really quick. I just have a comment, Lori. I live in an area, I'm in Northwest rural Wisconsin. I live in an area in a parish with the people that you probably don't want to have to deal with. So I've actually joined a Franciscan Justice Circle as well to help with this, but I just want to thank you for all the input and the ideas that you've given. I'm going to take this back to my Justice Circle because I think what we can do is take many of these ideas that you do, that you're doing, planting the gardens, bringing food to the food pantries. These are things that are conservative. I don't really believe in climate change type people can grasp and do. And so I think if we bring in this project without them completely knowing and then mention it and then bring them in that way, kind of through the back door. I just wanted to, but I've been working on this problem forever.
I mean, who doesn't like food and gardening? It always works.
And this is something that everyone's good at in this area. So it's something they're already talented at. We just need to bring it in and recognize this maybe for what they're doing.
Wishing you the best.
Thank you. I appreciate this. Was a great meeting.
It'll happen. It just will take time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. And it looks like Julia has a question, and I don't know if Sister Mary is still here. You had a question, but I think you might have left. But if you're still here, Sister Mary. No? Okay. Julia, go for it.
Well, if Sister Mary needs some time, because I know her schedule is much more busy than mine, I'm very happy for her to just speak up and say, Julia, be quiet for a second. Let me speak first. We know each other well enough to do that. So thank you for taking my second question here. And I could really relate to the previous speaker because I'm from a very conservative parish in a very conservative state of New Hampshire. And we do have a Laudato Si circle. Our parish priest says, no, Julia, you have a Laudato Si line because there are only 2 of you. And so, you know, we're using all of the strategies that my teammate who has lived in the town for about 10 years, and he's a social service, had been a social service director, so knows all about community engagement. And then I worked for cooperative extension. So the logic model is something that I really know a lot about. And so we've been using all those strategies. So I tell everybody that I'm a spy. And also as a good environmental educator, we're very good at stealing ideas because as every marine educator knows, no need to reinvent the keel when there's good stuff out there. So my question is about your Earth Day Mass, because we've mentioned green Mass or whatever to our parish priest, and he said, what's a green Mass? And I've heard from others like Fran Ludwig that there can be a bit of pushback in terms of, well, you really have to follow the lecture, you know. And I thought, okay, let's go to talk to people that have done these. What do they look like? Do you have to follow the lectionary? I want to give give our parish priest a very concrete example and say, this is what it could look like. You know, this is happens at the offertory, and this is happens in the various prayers, and this is what happens at the readings, and this is what happens in the hymns and the songs that are sung. So can you give me like a script? You can always email it to us. All of us and all of us that are in conservative parishes would probably really love that, because we need every tool in the toolbox.
I can share what we did, and it is on our YouTube too, if you want to see it actually.
Oh, good.
It's a mix. We started this long ago, right? The Feast of St. Francis of Assisi is the day everyone does the animal blessing. So that we slowly expanded that space into a bit of more of a green mass. And then we've done something the last, I think, 3 years in the chapel, maybe 4 years in the chapel, on an actual Sunday around Earth Day. So lectionary changes, it depends on the presider, how much they're open to that. But I think what's made it strong for us is the music. The music, we've incorporated creation care themes strongly. The petitions that day all focused on creation care. And then I mentioned our homily, the priest cede the homily to a lay person, and it focused on care for creation that day, which I know is a big step.
That's a big step. I'm not sure our parish priest would want me at the pulpit, but that's okay.
I
I'm
would
good
want
with
you
that,
there.
you know.
And we also, after the mass, we have a table, if it's nice day, outside. That's where we gave away the trees, the handouts. There's all kinds of things that you can do after the mass for people that are, just use your creative imagination for those. So.
Well, thank you very much, because I know it's never a straight line to the things that we have to do. Every community is very different. So thank you, really appreciate it. I'm adding that to my toolbox, needless to say, and I will look at your YouTube.
Yeah, go back to April 24th.
Yeah, I'll send that in the follow-up resource email if you remind me, Tim. And then
Sure.
Father John also said there's a Laudato Si movement prayer book that contains the Stations of the Cross and multiple other prayers. So we can definitely link to that. Yeah, thank you. Any other final thoughts or final questions that anyone is wanting to ask?
I have a question. How did you recruit your people? What system or methods did you use to get folks to join you?
It's varied over time. Many of them have come to us after hearing the talk at the mass. But my background, like I said, is in community social work. So when I started in the parish, using more of a community organizing, one-to-one relationship building kind of framework. So I have the staff time to give to that. A volunteer might not, right? But I could set up coffee or lunch with somebody who might be interested and sort of pull out what their interests are, and how they might get involved and feel like they're contributing to the work. But I know that's time consuming. So we have done the open invites from the pulpit, hit or miss. When we had someone speak, like give the homily, I think that got us 2 or 3 new people. Lori, what would you add to that?
I think that's all good. And besides that, everyone has difficulty saying no to Tim. So he'll just come straight out and ask you. And so you say yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And I will also say I'm putting a link in the chat and I'll send it in the follow-up email. The Ignatian Solidarity Network is hosting a virtual parish justice summit where people who are working on social mission issues can come together on June 15th to kind of think strategically about this. So we encourage you to sign up for that. You don't have to be at a Jesuit parish to participate. You just have to be concerned about a social ministry issue like ecology or racism or migration. And what I'm really excited about is, as a follow-up to that, we'll be having a Dreams to Action cohort, which will basically be like an organizing 101 cohort. So it'll teach you, like, how do you do coalition building? What is a one-on-one? So it'll teach kind of strategic skills to help you in your ministry. So please keep an eye out for that. We'll be sending more information. You don't have to go to the Parish Justice Summit to be a part of that, but the Parish Justice Summit is kind of a kickoff leading into that training.
Good.
All righty. Well, thank you all so much for your time and attention today. And we just appreciate the work that you're doing out, on the ground, in the parishes, in the fields, wherever you are. And so please feel free to reach out. I'll send a follow-up email with all of the resources that were mentioned. And also if Tim and Laurie are okay with it, their contact information again, just so you can reach out to ask more detailed follow-up questions if that's helpful for you and your work. So
Thank you for hosting.
yeah.
Thank you for hosting, and I wish all of you don't give up, and every little bit really helps. So thanks for all that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, only small groups of committed people have changed the world. So
For sure.
us doing ecology work in parishes know that. So thank you all. Blessings on your ministry, and we'll see you next month.